Hi guys and welcome to Fandom Newbie. My name is Shruti and in today's video I'm going to be recommending books which I think have absolutely beautiful writing. Like the writing in these books is just lyrical. These books are atmospheric, they are mesmerizing, but also there are some of them in this list which I think just have really fun and engaging plots. So yeah, these are just must-read fiction books that I think you guys should check out. So let's get started. The first book that I want to talk about is The Forest of Enchantments by Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni. Now, this is a retelling of the Ramayana from Sita's point of view. This book is just really well written. Now, I have to talk about my journey with this book. The first time that I read this book, I honestly didn't have a lot of context of exactly what the Ramayana was like, what it depicted, what it was all about. Like, of course, I knew the story of the Ramayana, but I didn't truly understand the nuances of it. And I used to feel like, like the Mahabharata, I used to feel was always a lot more gray. It was always a lot more nuanced. And the Ramayana, on the other hand, I felt was just a very like straight black and white story of good and evil. And so when I read this book for the first time, I felt that this was also a very straight, like clear cut sort of rendition of the Ramayana from Sita's point of view, but I still felt like it lacked nuance. And I thought that that had to do more with the source material than the actual book. But then recently, I read Devdutt Patnaik's Sita, which is his retelling of the Ramayana, and I just have a newfound respect for this epic. I feel like I finally understood the character of Ram and his teachings, and I also finally understood Sita's character. And after reading that, when I went back and sort of reread certain portions of this book, I just have a completely newfound respect for Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni's rendition of the Ramayana. Like, I finally understand the love and the respect that Ram and Sita have for each other, and even after the end, when Sita does get betrayed, even then, like the love that she feels for Ram, and yeah, like everything that happens towards the end of the book, I felt that it wasn't explored that well in this book initially when I read it, but now I get it. I don't know, like I don't know if I'm making sense, but basically this book, which I initially thought was slightly flawed, I think now is just perfect. I just have an absolutely newfound respect for this book. I think it is beautifully written. I think it captures Ram and Sita's relationship so well. And yeah, I'm in love with this book now. I'm like, this has been bumped up to a 5 out of 5 stars for me because I feel like I finally get it. The next book that I want to talk about is Tom Lake by Anne Patchett. Along with like reading this book, I also listened to this book on audiobook because the audiobook is narrated by Meryl Streep, and it was just such a treat to listen to her narrate this book. This book is about a mother, like she's a mother who has 3 grown children, and her name is Lara. And in her youth, this main character, Lara, used to be an actress. And now all of her 3 grown-up daughters who are in their 20s have come back home because of the pandemic. And basically, they're all stuck in lockdown on their farm. They have a cherry farm. And they're stuck on that farm. And the 3 daughters have asked Lara to tell the story of when she was an actress, and during that time when she dated this other actor who at that point in time wasn't very famous, but later on went on to become an absolute like global movie star. So basically it's Lara telling the story of how she fell in love with this guy and how she started dating him. This book is just so wholesome. Yeah, like everything about this book just is really sweet, and it's wholesome, and it's set on a cherry farm, and the way that that cherry farm is described is just so beautiful. Like, it made me want to leave this hustling bustling city of Bombay and like go to a farm and just like pick cherries and eat fresh fruit and like swim in a lake. Like, that's what this book made me feel like doing. It's just so beautifully described. It just feels very warm and cozy, and yeah, the perfect summer read, I think. And yeah, just beautifully narrated by Meryl Streep. So highly recommend the audiobook as well. It is available on Storytel. So check it out if you guys have a subscription. And yeah, definitely read this book as well. The next book is Beasts and Beauty by Soman Chainani. Now, this is basically a middle grade, or rather like a young adult book, and it's retellings of famous fairy tales. So the fairy tales which are retold in this book include Little Red Riding Hood, there is Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, Rapunzel, Hansel and Gretel, Beauty and the Beast, Peter Pan, Rumpelstilskin, Little Mermaid, Cinderella, like all of them. And basically, each story has been twisted to depict certain like ideals and morals that are very relevant in today's time. So there are stories about feminism in here, there are very like LGBTQ positive stories in here. So through these stories there are a lot of themes of empowerment, of self-love, of discovering your true self, of bravery, of parenthood. And yeah, so basically like a lot of morals that are very relevant to today, they have been woven in these stories. Now, the thing is that a lot of these stories are quite dark, and there are a few like sexually explicit themes that are explored through these stories. So I'm really surprised that this book is sold as a middle grade book. Like it says ages 10 and up, but like it didn't seem something that was appropriate for children. Like I think this is a really good young adult book. And yeah, the stories are quite dark. Some of them are like I said, quite sexually explicit, but they all have really relevant and important morals. So again, highly recommend. The next book that I want to talk about is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. Now, this is a romantic fantasy, and the world in which this book is set in is this war-torn world where two gods are like fighting each other. And the way that they're fighting is that they are recruiting human armies to sort of fight their battles and fight their war. So our two main characters, Iris and Roman, live in this like, yeah, basically they live in a war-torn world. And both of them are war correspondents. Essentially, they are journalists and they are work rivals. Now, the story that follows is what happens when Iris and Roman are sort of thrown in the midst of this war, and how they're sort of like forced to work together, and what happens during that time when they start of sort of like developing feelings for each other. And yeah, basically how they have to sort of manage their love for each other at a time when the world around them is collapsing into war. A lot of this book is in the form of letters, and those love letters are just so beautiful to read. And the world building and the mythology of this entire world was also just very interesting to get into. And yeah, this book leaves off at a cliffhanger, which was quite like heartbreaking. So I am definitely going to pick up the next book in the series because I need to know what happens next for these two characters. And yeah, again, if you love fantasy, if you love romance, I think you'll really enjoy this book. The next book is Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Taylor Jenkins Reid is one of my all-time favorite authors, and I feel like she can't do any wrong when it comes to writing books. She just writes the most amazing and immersive historical fiction books. This book is about a famous tennis player named Carrie Soto and how she comes back from retirement to try to reclaim her world record of most number of Grand Slams won. This book was like a deep dive into the entire tennis world, especially the way media as well as us as an audience, how we view women tennis players, how we are so judgmental when it comes to their weight, how we're so judgmental when it comes to the way they act on a tennis field, like if they show aggression versus if they're more dainty versus if they're a bit more masculine or more feminine, the way we sort of view these tennis players and the way we pass judgments on them This book tackles that, I think, in a really, really good way. And yeah, overall, it was just a very, very engaging story about a highly competitive tennis player, her relationship with her dad, her relationship with her own self-worth, and her, like her own career and what tennis meant to her. It was just really, really beautifully written. Highly, highly recommend. Another banger from Taylor Jenkins Reid, in my opinion. Next up, we have Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. This is another fantasy book, but it's a highly cozy fantasy book about this character named Viv, who basically is like, what is it called, like someone who is hired to like kill people. She's one of those, and she wants to give up that life of crime and just like settle down in a really cute cozy town and open a coffee shop. That is what this book is about. And basically, the people that Viv meets through this process, all of her customers, as well as the people she finds to run the coffee shop with her, how she opens this coffee shop, is what this book is about. It is just super cozy and super atmospheric. If you love coffee and small towns and like, the entire process of making a coffee shop, and like diving into a world where you can like smell the coffee, smell the cakes that are being made, and just like be in this very atmospheric, cozy little bubble, then this book is definitely for you. Next up, we have Club You to Death by Anuja Chauhan. This book is another really, really fun book. It is set in a Delhi Turf Club, so a highly prestigious club in Delhi, where a murder takes place at the gym. So the gym instructor is basically murdered, and there are quite a few suspects from within Delhi high society that could have done the murder. This book was honestly just a really, really fun book. Like, it's not very good writing. It was just very, very fun. It talks about like, all those like typical Delhi aunties from like high society who are into gossip and things like that. It also talks about like the pretentious Delhi society and like, all of their issues and problems and things which are going on there. Yeah, it's just a very like juicy, spicy little book about a lot of the drama that happens in the lives of Delhi high society people. It was just, yeah, it was a very, very quick, easy, breezy, fun read with a lot of masala, a lot of spice, a lot of drama. So check this out if that's what you're into. The next book is Bombay Balchao by Jane Borges. This was another really fun and engaging book. Now, this book follows the lives of the members of the Coutinho family while they're living in this like Catholic dominated society or like community in Bombay, Catholic dominated neighborhood in Bombay, which is called Kavel. This book follows the lives of different members of the Coutinho family, and it spans from like the 1940s to the early 2000s, and it talks about different members of the family through this like a long expanse in time. Basically, the interesting thing about this book is, along with like the evolution of the Coutinho family, we also get the evolution of Bombay from like the 1940s until the early 2000s, and it talks about pre-independence Bombay. It talks about like a newly independent Bombay and the cultural things happening there. It talks about like the political evolution within that neighborhood of Kavel. It's just a very, very interesting book that intertwines the stories of these residents of this neighborhood along with the stories of Bombay. And I had a really fun time reading this book. So if you're interested in like historical fiction, and especially if you're from Bombay, I think you'll really, really enjoy this book. Next up, we have Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. Now, this is another fantasy book, and it is a Rumpelstilskin retelling, but it has like a complete twist. This book follows, again, two characters, Miriam and Irina. Miriam has been kidnapped by this like ice sorcerer, and she's been taken to his palace, and she's made queen of that palace, and she's forced to turn all of the silver in his palace into gold. So this is where like the Rumpelstiltskin bit comes into play. And Irina is basically set to marry this very, very cruel Tsar. So this is also set in sort of like a Russian inspired world. And basically, what the story is about is how the lives of Irina and Miriam kind of intertwine and how they can sort of save each other from these very bad fates. This book is highly, highly atmospheric again. It's a book that really just makes you feel cold. Like the world in which this is set in is just like an ice winter wonderland sort of thing. So like you can actually feel the cold in your bones when you're reading this book. And it is just very, very beautifully written. It's super atmospheric. It is a bit slow, so it's kind of like a slow burn, but once you finally like get into it and you're just immersed in the entire atmosphere of this fantasy land, I think you'll have an amazing time with this book. And the last book that I want to recommend is All Systems Red by Martha Wells. Now this is a really short book. It's more like a novella, and it's the first in the Murder Bot series. Now, this book follows our main character, who is a robot called Murderbot. And basically, this robot has been designed by the government of this like sci-fi universe to be a security guard to units that go out in space to handle certain missions. But this particular sec unit, like the robot is called a sec unit, this particular sec unit has hacked his own modules, and basically now he can think for himself. He's become sort of like sentient, I guess, in that way. And he doesn't really like doing his job. He doesn't like going and like murdering people. He just wants to sit and chill and watch TV shows. Basically, when this sec unit and his like unit of scientists are on a planet doing a mission, something goes wrong, and so now it's up to the scientists as well as this rogue sec unit to sort of figure out what's happening on that planet and why their lives are in danger. So essentially this is just like a space adventure with a very cute and lovable murdering robot at the center, and also just a bunch of really like fun scientists, like nerdy scientist characters who are on a mission to find out why their lives are in danger. Highly recommend. I think this is the perfect book that can get you out of a reading slump. So yeah, that was my video for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, give this a video a big fat thumbs up. Leave a comment down below letting me know some of your recommendations, and also, have you read these books? What did you think about them? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments, because I'd love to have some bookish discussions with you in the comment section. And of course, do subscribe to my channel for more book related videos. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.